good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. As I record this, it's a little bit later than I usually do this. I have free time, a bit of free time today. It's Friday, November 10th. We Many people are observing Veterans Day today. Veterans Day is technically tomorrow in the U.S. And so I just want to give my love and respect to. Good morning. I just want to give my love and respect to veterans out there. Many veterans in my life. My grandfather, father, uncle, cousins, um, and lots of friends all served. So hats off to you. And today we're going to get into we're going to talk about rituals, talk about what ritual is, give a little bit about ritual design if you want to create your own rituals, how you might do that. My background, if you aren't a regular viewer of this channel, is in shamanism. I'm not going to give specific. I might talk. Good day. Hello. um, I may allude to specific shamanic rituals, but there are far too many for me to go into great detail about any of them or anything. So I'm going to speak in sort of general terms. So hopefully that's applicable and helps your thinking. And as you can see, chat is open. I'm really happy if people have questions or comments or something they want me to talk about that I'm not talking about. And if you follow me, often I go off on tangents. That's the ADHD part of me, but I try to reel it back in. Good morning to you as well. Thank you, gosh, for joining. Thank you for all the good mornings and good days. And I realize, one of the things I love is the ability to talk to people all over the world. So I realize that people are in different time zones. I'm in the East Coast of the U.S. It's a couple minutes after 9 a.m. for me here. So I'm in the Northeast. We got snow yesterday, not too much, just a little bit, and it didn't stick. So first snow of the year. I don't know. This is not really. Actually, it is a holiday mug on the inside. I didn't even realize this. On the inside, it says "Home for the Holidays." So, you know, it's the holiday season. I'm really looking forward to Thanksgiving coming up here in a couple weeks. All of the kids will be here. I mean, all of the kids. Who knows, plus or minus, boyfriends and girlfriends, and my brother and sister-in-law and their kids will be here, and it'll be a fully packed house with. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to having everybody over. So let's talk about rituals. And one of the things I like to do usually is define my terms, so that not because my definition of something is better than anybody else's, but so there's an understanding of what I mean when I talk about something. So, let's talk about what a ritual is. Like, we all have, like, when somebody says ritual, you might have an idea about that. You might have an idea of people performing ceremonial magic, or somebody doing some sort of repeated thing. Ritual can have the connotation of repeated action, but not always. But the simplest definition that I didn't come up with this definition, but I could find as to what makes something a ritual is that it is a symbolic action or set of actions, right? So it's symbolic. I'm doing things symbolically. I'm doing things to, for spiritual purposes, or even psychological purposes, psycho-spiritual, social purposes, but it's symbolic action. And a good example of that is like a wedding ceremony. And I'll talk about the difference between a ceremony and a ritual in a moment. But there are rituals that are part of many wedding ceremonies, like the exchange of rings, right? It's not 100% necessary. You can get married in most places, maybe everywhere, without a ring, but that's a very common thing. It's a ritual, exchanging these rings. and it is symbolic. It's symbolic of sealing the bond, the ring. People have different meanings for it. It's not necessarily important to have easy to define meanings for your ritual to have a profound effect. Obviously, there are rituals that are involved with spiritual life, right? Mass, Catholic Mass contains a number of rituals. It can be, and rituals can consist of multiple rituals, right? So during the Catholic Mass, I'm not an expert in Catholicism, but the Eucharist is one ritual within the ritual structure of the Catholic Mass. So, and it is, I don't want to insult anybody or make anybody mad, but it's symbolic. You're consuming the blood and body of the host, and or of Christ. And the idea in Catholicism anyway is that it literally is transmuted into the body and blood of Christ when you're consuming it. So but that is a ritual that is within a larger ritual structure. And so let's talk a little bit about the difference between a ritual and a ceremony. A ceremony is meant to mark, usually contains rituals or a ritual or ritualistic action, but it's meant to mark something significant, right? So a graduation ceremony will contain rituals, right? I remember graduating college and turning my tassel to the other side. That's a ritual that was part of the ceremony. A wedding ceremony might contain a number of rituals, right? Depending on if it's a religious ceremony or not. When I was married, there were rituals. The woman I was married to was from the Philippines. We had Filipino ritual as part of our wedding ceremony, right? So there are rituals and ceremonies for things like rites of passage, right? Rite and ritual have the same root word. So we have those things. So let's talk about a little bit why ritual is important. In my opinion, there isn't enough ritual in most people's lives. Some people, depending on where you live, depending on whatever, you may do ritual every day or whatever. In general, in the world that I live in the U.S. and where I live, we don't have, unless you're if you're part of the Jewish faith, for example, you would have a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, but we don't have very many rites of passage when somebody is moving into adulthood. We also don't have rites of passage for puberty. We don't have rites of passage for people who are moving into seniorship. Like we might have a retirement party for somebody if they retire. But we don't have, okay, now you've gone through this phase of your life where now you're becoming an elder. We don't have a rite of passage for that. We have rituals of like swearing in ceremonies for public officials, that sort of thing. So they're associated with specific trades, specific, avenues of life. Obviously, lots of religious ceremony and ritual out there, but generally speaking, we've lost a lot of that. In shamanism, there are a lot of rituals. When we do a healing for somebody, we would call it a healing ceremony or a healing ritual, usually a ceremony, because it's marking if we're doing soul retrieval, for example, it's marking the return of a piece of somebody that they have lost during a trauma. And in some cultures, it's like a welcome home to part of you. And that's a beautiful thing. And to me, it helps people really integrate. Right. So once again, ritual we can think of as symbolic action, right? So I'm doing something symbolically. Let's say that I'm performing an act of ceremonial magic, and there's ritual involved with that. Going to the Golden Dawn tradition, which is, one I'm slightly familiar with, you would begin everything with what's called a Kabbalistic cross. Then you would perform, a banishing ritual. The most common one that everybody knows is the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. But there are others that they would use, right? And so there would be, one ritual, then another, that are all part of one big ritual structure. And then you would do some work. And this gets me a little bit into ritual design. And sort of the main purpose of this talk here is for people who may want to design their own rituals. And I encourage that. I think that can be a beautiful thing. And if you can share them with other people, that can be really beautiful too. And you don't have to be a shaman. You don't have to be a priest. You can be you. Maybe you are a shaman or a priest, but you can be whatever you are and create beautiful ritual. And, it's important to know that there aren't a lot of rules, but there are some things that can make ritual more powerful, more effective, right? And so ritual, because it's symbolic action, is meant to act on us in ways that are beyond our conscious mind, right? When in a wedding ceremony, when rings are exchanged, you're not consciously thinking, okay, now, hopefully not, now I've tagged my cat's walking through. My cat's doing the ritual of jumping across my shoulders. I'm not consciously thinking, now I have ownership over you. Hopefully not. And now you have ownership over me. It is symbolic. It's deep. The meaning might be beyond simple words. And even a simple ritual can contain that, right? We have a ritual. Many people will blow out a birthday candle, right? Make a wish, blow out a candle. It's a very simple act of candle magic. And I'm sorry if you have just found out for the first time you've been performing candle magic, but that's exactly what that is. I mean, that's that's from time immemorial. Set an intention, and set, have a candle burning, focus on the candle and blow it out. That's candle magic. That is a ritual. And the blowing out of the candle, having the number of candles on the cake match the person's birthday, and having to blow, like, there's a lot of, even for something so simple, there's a lot of rich symbolism there, which I think is a delightful thing. So ritual, really well done ritual, is designed to make an impact on us on many levels. I can't talk about the details of this because one thing I recommend and one thing I do is taking oaths very seriously. If you make an oath, particularly particularly during a ritual and in a spiritual setting, you're creating a bond that, if you break, has a profound effect upon you. So anyway, one of the most profound rituals I have ever participated in was when I was raised to be a third-degree Freemason. And when that occurred, there was a special event going on at a shrine temple, and they needed somebody who was ready to be, it's called raised when you go to the third degree. Like you come in, there's three degrees before you're a Master Mason anyway. And I know people out there are like, oh, so-and-so is a 32nd or 33rd degree Mason or whatever. Those are additional degrees and different rights. The main body of Freemasonry, there are 3 degrees to Master Mason. So when I became a Master Mason in my early 20s now, the ceremony was conducted by a group of what are called craftsmen who specialize in ritual. And the ritual was, I've been to a lot of raising ceremonies in, actually in different states, even different lodges. And this was elaborate, and it was very powerful. Um, as that ritual is meant to be, actually. And I'd like to think that was how it was conducted most of the time in the past. And in some places in recent years, the ritual is rather uh, gotten watered down quite a bit. Some of the, I've noticed in some lodges, some of the oaths sworn have been changed, maybe to be more palatable, but to get away from the original. Um, my cat doesn't do that unless I'm actually on camera, right? So if I'm working with a student or doing these live broadcasts, she likes to make appearances. She lavishes in attention. Um, so I'm raising her well. So what are some things that can make a ritual more profound to take effect? And we'll talk about ritual design a little bit. So most rituals that are designed, that like some spiritual ritual or shamanic ritual or whatever, will have a a ritual structure. Some people will wing a ritual or whatever, and that it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that if you want to design a ritual in advance to make it as effective and as powerful as possible, there's some considerations. So most rituals, most spiritual rituals will, the important aspect is that there is a ritual container. The ritual container, this is metaphoric, it's not a real, well, it can be, I guess, means that there is there's a specialness to ritual that separates it from everyday activity. If I take a sip of my coffee, it might be part of a ritual, but that's different than if I'm drinking wine or something ceremonially, as part of a spiritual ritual, right? So what sets ritual apart from everyday activity, is in the three-dimensional world, is time and space, right? So most ritual will have some sort of opening and some sort of closing, so that the conscious and unconscious minds of the participants are like, okay, now I'm in ritual space. There may also be a designated location for ritual, although I've done ritual certainly remotely over Zoom. But I'm thinking about like a lodge or a coven or something that casts a circle that says anything that happens inside this space, inside the special space during this special time, is set apart from everyday activity, right? Doing that increases the impact of the ritual, whatever the intention of the ritual is, which goes to, and maybe should have been my first point, is the intention of the ritual. Um, some ritual people just do because it's been done forever and ever, and they don't really understand it. When I was young, somebody got mad at me. I wasn't questioning their beliefs, but somebody was talking about how baptism was really important to them. Christian baptism was really important to them. And I said, okay, just because I don't understand, I wasn't raised in a church where baptism was a thing. Just so I understand why that's important to you, what does that symbolize? What does it stand for? Why do you do it? What's the meaning behind it? And the person got really mad at me. I wasn't questioning whether or not baptism was important to them. I wasn't questioning their belief to say, oh, baptism's silly. It wasn't at all. I was trying to understand. But what I discovered was this person actually didn't know like what the purpose of baptism was in their particular religion. So they knew they had to do it. but they didn't know why or the importance of it or whatever. And that, maybe maybe it's not that important to understand to be able to put into words. Maybe the impact is meant to be more spiritual and impress upon people's unconscious mind and upon their spirit something. But I personally would probably not want to do a ritual or participate in a ritual without understanding the intent behind it, right? So intent's really important. So somebody conducting a ritual, the priest or clergy or whatever, um, definitely understands the intent behind the ritual, right? Baptism is about cleansing of original sin in most places, or entering into you know whatever, and it's very similar to other ablution ceremonies from other spiritual systems and other religions. So um so the so uh intent is something that will make ritual more powerful. I'm going to do a manifestation ritual. I'm going to do a ritual to celebrate. So I'm going to do a ceremony that will include ritual to celebrate the new moon. What are the components of that, right? If you know what the intention is, if I'm saying, I'm just connecting with the new moon, um, I'm not going to do, I'm probably not going to add components to the ritual that are sun based, right? Or something else, right? So having an intent, if you're designing a ritual, is critical. Um, Very important. It's important to the ritual design. And, everything within a ritual can be designed to reinforce the intent, right? So, in magic, in ritual magic, one might make a talisman, right? One might have a ritual to consecrate a talisman. And very often, a talisman might have an association with one of the planets. Let's say I'm going to make a talisman to Venus, right? I want to attract love into my life. I want to feel more loving. I want to have great sex, right? So I'm going to make a talisman to Venus. Well, first of all, I might choose to do that ritual on a Friday, which is a day traditionally associated with Venus. And I might choose, based on astrology, the hour of Venus to start the ritual. And I might use um, candles that are pink in color to represent Venus. And I might, dress in a certain way and use certain incense. And like, the more I can do in this ritual to impress upon my unconscious mind the intent and the focus of the ritual, and to bring connections, right? Uh there is a an author I'm reading right now, and I'll talk about, not today, but I'll talk about his book. He writes about um uh traditional, um I want to say traditional witchcraft from the British Isles. So he takes from writings of like Scottish witch trials and stuff to talk about what the practices were and stuff like that at that time. And so, one of his main pillars, he describes 10 pillars of witchcraft or sorcery, whatever you want to call it. And one of those is understanding the connection between all things, that all things, all beings, all people, all items are connected. So, one of the things that can make ritual more powerful is to have the items in the ritual reinforce that connection, and to keep he actually implores people to keep the connection in mind, through the entire ritual, to make the ritual more powerful, right? And by more powerful, I just mean to have its greatest effect, whatever the intended effect is. So, um, you know, if the ritual is a wedding ceremony, the intended effect is to strengthen this bond between two people, to make it last two lifetimes, and that sort of thing. So to keep those things in mind, There's a lot of stuff around the sort of what we have for wedding ceremonies, at least in America. I don't know how they work out in other places, but um, that don't symbolize that don't necessarily reinforce that are excuse me, a lot of things are symbolic of wealth, um, because originally weddings were financial arrangements, right? There were dowries, there were, alliances made, all of these things. And nowadays, where people hopefully get married for love more often, I honestly think I see a lot of people sort of changing up the wedding ceremony to make it more personalized. Why women still wear white wedding dresses, and that whole thing where it's supposed to be representing that the woman is still a virgin at marriage is untrue, actually. White wedding dresses came about in the Victorian times, and they were meant to symbolize wealth, because if you wore white material, you couldn't get stains on it. So it showed that you were a special princess with a special dress for a special day. The same thing with engagement rings and diamonds, and the same thing with wedding cakes made out of white flour and sugar, which were very expensive. They're all symbols of wealth and not of what we think they are. Although symbols can change meanings over time, certainly. But um, so ritual design basically is you have some sort of beginning, you have some sort of end, saying, okay, now we're starting the ritual, now we're ending the ritual, and then there's ritual action that happens in the middle. What goes on either end and what goes in the middle, very, very flexible, right? So in many traditions, there would be a blessing or a banishing that happens at the beginning of the ceremony. So in churches with high masses, you will have you'll have someone walk through the church with a censer waving incense around. That is the same thing as smudging a circle, right? You're clearing out the space. So when I do ritual design, because I do it shamanically, um, I am helping spirits to come in. I am asking other spirits who might interfere to leave temporarily. At the end of the ritual, I am closing things off and giving leave for helping spirits to not have to pay as close attention. And the space is now sort of desanctified. It doesn't have to, not that I would like go into a church and desanctify it or whatever. But the space is no longer representing the ritual. The time of the ritual is done. The space is no longer. So not this past summer, but the summer before, I did a ceremony for somebody who was about to get married. No, not the actual marriage ceremony. But they wanted a ceremony with their friends and family prior to the wedding, and they wanted it to a shamanic ceremony. So I designed a ceremony, and it took place in a gazebo, a rather large gazebo, and which was perfect because, first of all, it's round, and I really like round shapes and structures. But it was a structure that held the ceremony, the ritual together. And so when when people entered the gazebo, they were smudged with smoke, sort of saying, okay, we're dropping all of the crap that you might have collected with you outside of the ceremonial space. Ceremonial space had been smudged and arranged, and there were ritual objects and an altar and all kinds of stuff set up. And everything was to bring this focus and the intention of bringing the family together, helping the bride through. Wedding days can be a lot. They can be stressful and whatever, and setting the tone for having the best day ever. And it was I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed designing the ceremony, and I think the people who attended really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. And the bride who was who was the focus of the ceremony, felt really, really supported on her day, and that was the intention of the ceremony, and blessing her and everybody, and her parents and the other members of the bridal party and the groom's parents. And I think the groom was maybe the only one not there. Quite a few people packed into the gazebo, but we made it work. Um, but there was the ritual container. So then when people left and so I concluded the ceremony, and I think I rang a gong or a bell, or it was a bowl. I rang a bowl 3 times, and I made it clear to people. I said, when I ring this 3 times, the ceremony is over. Please, move clockwise around the gazebo and exit, and then the ceremony is done. So they knew, like, okay, now my behavior is no longer part of the ceremony. My actions are no longer part of this ritual, right? Um, so again, if I'm doing something, um, you know, the items that I bring into ritual are going to be appropriate again to the intention of the ritual. Um, you know, if if there is a wedding, for example, you would have candles. You might have you know if you're doing hand fasting, you might have a special wrap for the hands that are getting fasted. Um, you know, if you're doing a ritual to bless a house, that's different than doing like a clearing where you're banishing or psychopumping deceased spirits that are stuck in a home. You're going to have maybe some similar things, but maybe some different things with you. So the material components can lend to the ritual, can lend if they support the intent, if they support the spirit, if they support the feeling of connection that you want to make with everything, with the universe, the connection to the universe. Um, those are some considerations for ritual design. What are the implements? What are the parts of the ritual? Um, did I remember doing as a team doing ritual design for closing a closing ceremony for shamanic apprenticeship, and so we were separated into 4 teams. Each team got an element. The element that we got was air or wind, and so we designed a part of the ceremony. There was a fire team and an earth team and a water team. And the water team made a ceremonial tea. I forget what we did as an air team, but there was something that we did that we handed out and that everybody participated in. But this was many years ago. Uh, but it was beautiful. It was a really nice ceremony. We had the fire team had a fire. We did around a bonfire. Lots of shamanic ceremony happens around fire. We frequently refer to it as grandfather fire. Um, and I've done really simple ritual too, where we would get this paper. It's made out of some kind of starch that dissolves in water, and you would write an intention or something, and one by one deposit it into a bowl of water that was being stirred, and that would dissolve the intention and into the water, which was then given to the paper material is just starch and is completely biodegradable, and so we would offer the water to like a big oak tree or something to absorb the intentions and to help us put them out into the world. So I would say having an intention behind a ritual or ceremony is a key, and that's obviously people getting married, like, oh, we're going to be married. That's the intention. But what's the intention for the marriage? The intention for the marriage is to help sanctify and create this bond between the people that are getting married. If you're celebrating somebody's birthday, the celebration is, congratulations on reaching this milestone, and I hope you have and I hope you have many more. I hope you have a year ahead, another year of health, and let's celebrate you. Celebration is important. Like it's ritual, and even large ritual celebrations go back to prehistoric times, right? Frequently celebrations associated with seasons Stonehenge, for example, in the UK, is as archaeologists find more stuff, they realize that it is part of a huge ritual complex, and that massive rituals were held that included feasting and orgies and you know who knows what else. But this was important, and important in every culture where fertility was important, which was every culture at some point in time, right? Big fertility rituals in um, you know every place where there was paganism and animism. um, you know that stuff is really important to human survival, and it was seen as a connection, their connection to the divine. And usually fertility was a major player in the roles of gods and goddesses, amongst hunters gatherers, even when agriculture took over and stuff. A lot of fertility rites have been fertility rituals have been sort of like stamped down, or um, sort of sanitized over the many years, or made more palatable because they were pagan rituals that the Christianization of Europe and other places didn't tolerate and outlawed or whatever. So one example of that is like May Day ceremonies. I don't know anywhere in the U.S. where they still do this, but the maypole is a phallic symbol, and having maidens dancing around the maypole was part of a fertility. Right now, it would be children or whatever, and they wouldn't know that it's a phallic symbol stuck into the earth, the Mother Earth, uniting Mother Earth with a father god to fertility. And there would be rites, there would be springtime rites in many places that involved large large sort of group sex rituals, uh, very common in pagan societies, where fertility was huge, and there were gods and goddesses of fertility, usually goddesses. If you see some of the I forget the Venus statue, they call them Venus statues. These statues that are 30,000, these little carvings that are 30,000, 20,000 years old, dug up over Europe. They're of a female figure that is quite large, large breasts, large, is a nude figure, large breasts. And the interpretation of that is this is a fertility totem, which makes a lot of sense, right? You Body fat would have been a symbol of having plenty, having lots to eat during those times. Having any excess body fat, plus you know um, the symbolism of larger breasts, being able to feed children, and that sort of thing. And I know that in modern days we would have very different ideas about what those things symbolized. But I think the interpretation that this is a fertility goddess is probably pretty spot on. And that's will those things were probably used. Those statues were probably used ritually, if I had to guess. So anyway, just a little bit today, just a short talk today about ritual and ritual design. I hope it's given you some things to think about. So remember that a ritual can be super simple, can be very complex. Generally, if you want to design a ritual and have it be effective, you want to have an intention behind the ritual that's pretty clear, and then the components of the ritual support that intention and support your connection to everything there is. Remember also that ritual is meant to make an impact that is more than conscious. So the unconscious mind and the spirit, and even perhaps the energy body, and the a lot of ritual happens on the astral plane. A lot of shamanic ritual, even if my body is participating in some ceremony, you know, there is action that's happening in what we call non-ordinary reality, or the astral planes, or the upper world, lower world, the other world, the whatever name you want to apply to it. There's action that's happening in more than one, on many planes. And aligning those things makes the ritual more effective as well. So with that, I am going to wish everybody a good day. I know this is a little bit of a shorter talk today, but just thought I would jump in. And I did have one yesterday, if you missed it, on talking about sex, shamanism, and spirit a little bit. And so you can check out the recording of that. It's on my Facebook page as well as my YouTube channel. And hope everybody has a great weekend.